Everyone, I am Janet Shanley, and I'm the Director of Graduate Admission, and am going to be the moderator for this next hour. As you may see, that our intention is to record this event so that those who are unable to join us can also benefit from the wisdom of our panelists and also have an opportunity to see the transcript of the chat. So let me just give us the lay of the land here for how this program is going to work, so that you can take best advantage of this opportunity. We are a small group this evening, which is one of my favorite things, because it gives a chance for you to leave here without any unanswered questions, if possible, because you should have several ways to make that make those possibilities known. So we have some prompts that we're going to ask the panelists, but if those prompts foster a question for you, please use the chat to put that question in the chat box. And we have people monitoring the chat, and if you have a follow-up for any of our panelists, they can follow up with you on the chat as well. And our hope is that you will leave feeling better informed, but also kind of better connected. So that's kind of the intention for this evening. And so I welcome all of you, and am so thankful that you have taken this time to make us part of your evening or morning for some of you calling from a far different time zone. So welcome. This event is co-sponsored with the Graduate Student Council, and normally they would be the moderator of this event, but had a conflict that didn't make that possible this time around. But they send their regards and best wishes, and also to watch for more information from the Graduate Student Council and their upcoming events and programming for your benefit as you move into the new quarter. So watch for that later. I also, as I have said, I ask that you, if you haven't put yourself on mute, please do that. It will help others be able to hear well if everybody's on mute. So except our panelists, and we're going to ask them to introduce themselves, and so you understand kind of who they are and the program they represent. So I will start with Anushka.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Anushka Agarwal, and I'm from India. I'm enrolled in the Masters of Couples and Family Therapy. For this, I just joined Seattle University in fall 2021. And I also work part-time at the Graduate Admissions Office as the Graduate Ambassador. So if you guys have any questions regarding international, student accommodations or anything like that, I can maybe give my inputs on that.
Thank you, Anushka. We also have another international student, Uchenna. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Uchenna Nwoke. I'm from Nigeria. I'm currently doing the Masters of Computer Science, Software Engineering specialization. I'm a full-time student. I don't have a job currently, so yeah. If you ever need resources or help or with the computer science degree, thank you.
Thank you. Christine, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Campbell, and I am a continuing student in the Student Development Administration program. And I also work at Seattle U in the Student Support Center. So if you have any questions really about anything to do with Seattle U, I'm probably the person you'll talk to. And yeah, I guess that's it. Oh, this is my second master's. I guess maybe some of you have done the same thing where you got a degree pretty freshly out of your undergraduate program, and then later on decided that you needed a little more specificity or maybe even a pivot. So that would be me.
Thank you, Christine. And Christine is a wealth of knowledge. I'm going to give her a chance to plug the Student Support Center later on in the event. Ashley, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name's Ashley Miller, and I'm here today representing the Educational and Organizational Learning and Leadership Program. It's a doctoral program at the College of Education. I also work for Seattle University as the Senior Admissions Counselor for the College of Education. And I also am an alumni of Seattle University's Masters in Arts Leadership program. So I could speak on a few different levels tonight.
Excellent. Thank you, Ashley. And last but not least is Doug.
Hi, my name is Doug. I'm also in the Masters of Computer Science program with a specialization in software engineering. I'm in the second year of the Masters right now, so I'll be graduating in June. But before doing this, I did the Bootcamp, and I also did the Computer Science Fundamentals certificate. So I've been here for a few years. If you have any questions about those, let me know. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. So that's our panelist. And as I said, this is meant to be a student-to-student sort of event. So I am grateful for them to be here to share their wisdom with all of you. We're going to cover a couple topical areas, and we probably won't get to all of our questions, but we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. But I think some of you may have some questions about what Seattle University is doing around COVID requirements and how that might be impacting people as students on campus. We're going to talk a little bit about some of you may still be taking classes in a virtual or hybrid space and not completely in a face-to-face environment. So talking a little bit about tips for making that virtual and hybrid learning space work if that's the situation some of you find yourselves in. We're going to talk a lot more about academic and student support. And then we're also going to talk about some things that may just kind of personal tips for making the transition to your program a little easier. So those are kind of overarching topical areas that we're going to try to cover. In the meantime, please take advantage of the chat. We have 3 of our colleagues that are moderating the chat, and the panelists are keeping an eye on the chat as well as necessary. But we have Troy, Nicole, and Kendrick that are monitoring the chat for us. And so make sure that you leave here with as many of your questions answered as possible. And it is certainly the benefit of being a smaller group that you should be able to do that. So let's start a little bit about the COVID requirements and the kind of expectations that we have on campus. Part of the scenario for us is that we are following the guidelines that are dictated by both the King County where we are located, but also with the state of Washington. So we have been a highly vaccinated campus. We're over 97% vaccinated, fully vaccinated. The definition of fully vaccinated may be changing in the booster environment, but some of you may be not yet fully vaccinated. So you may have some concerns about all that, but we'll start with Christine. Do you want to talk a little bit about the vaccine requirements for students, staff, and faculty?
Sure. Well, one thing just to know is that the Seattle U webpage is kept really up to date. So things do change from time to time. And the thing I would highly recommend is just go to the Seattle U webpage, and there's a blue bar across the top that has sort of, I think they call it COVID response. And you can click on that and get really kind of up to minute policies about vaccines and things. So the way it has been in fall quarter is that if you're going to be on campus for any reason, you either have to have proof of vaccination turned in to the, there's a place again on the webpage to upload your attestation that you have been vaccinated, and then a photo card to show that you have. So you need to do that, or if you have an exemption, you can upload that. And if you're not going to be on campus at all, so maybe you're taking an online class, maybe you live in another state or country, then you can do an online attestation. saying that you will never be on campus. So those are 3 options. And again, those can be found on the main webpage, and you've probably gotten emails, et cetera, about them. They were doing weekly sort of random COVID testing, but because the campus was so, there just wasn't any outbreaks happening, they slowed that down, and I don't think they're doing that anymore. They may, again, in the winter quarter, just depending on how things go. And then the most recent update has been that when you return to campus or start on campus in winter quarter, that somewhere during that first week you get a COVID test and then turn that in. And there's a COVID testing site right on the same street that the Starbucks is on at 12th and Columbia. So you can do that, and there's never a line. I just walk up and do it. So that's an option, or you can do it, wherever is convenient for you. So that's kind of the main things. When you're on campus, you need to wear a mask in classes. But I just find that most people just kind of leave them on as they're roaming around, because you never know when you're going to pop into a building. And that's it. It's pretty simple, and we've just had such good outcomes this quarter. So I think what we're doing is working, and very few people have had to quarantine or miss any classes.
Thank you, Christine.
Yeah, okay. What if we don't want to get vaccinated but have some classes on campus? Will their classes be recorded online? I guess I would check with the professor, but the general thrust is that if the class is an in-person class, then it's an in-person class. And if you had to quarantine for some reason, you would make arrangements with that professor. But if you don't want to get vaccinated, then I would just, let's see, you said your class is on campus. You'll need to get some kind of exemption if you're not going to get a vaccination. And again, you can sort of work through that with the student health center to, kind of fill them in about what you're thinking, and they'll share with you what the policies are.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Before we leave that completely, I'm going to do what I said I wasn't going to do, but just throw a general question out there for those of you who maybe started out in virtual and now have moved to face-to-face in fall quarter, how that classroom environment has felt to you in COVID times. I guess, Doug, you may have been in here longer, but did you start out completely virtually and now you have had that opportunity to be in face-to-face?
Yeah, so actually I started out in person,
Okay.
and I was here for almost a year, and then COVID hit. But yeah, it was a big transition going to virtual, and it was less of a big transition coming back to being in person, although it was a little bit weird, I think people are a little bit on edge. But it's really nice to be back on campus, and really nice to be in the presence of the professor instead of seeing them on Zoom. So I think it's been great.
Thank you. That's a good segue to talking a little bit about that virtual and hybrid learning environment, since many of you have had both of those experiences, and so just want to see if you can share some of your success tips with students that may be new to that learning environment. So since most classes will be on campus, but some will remain in that online or hybrid strategy. So Ashley, do you want to talk a little bit about what strategies you've made use of to be successful with virtual learning?
Yeah, definitely. So just a little background information on me and the program that I'm in. I started my program in 2019 over the summer. And so I did take in-person courses that summer into the fall, and then obviously in 2020 transitioned to virtual learning. And I think for me, the things that helped the most was just staying connected with cohort members using things like WhatsApp, obviously over Zoom, at home, just creating a space where I could devote myself to my studies in online classes. So I understand like not everyone has a room that you can devote in your home to where you study or do class, but even if you can like make a little corner where there's like no distractions to be able to just kind of get away from everything that's going on around you in your home and just focus solely on the course is really helpful. I know once I did that, initially I think I was doing class like at my kitchen table and like getting really frustrated. But when I like dedicated a space towards studying, that was super helpful. And then actually just, relying on those relationships with your cohort, like don't underestimate that. Actually, a few of my cohort members and we created a weekly check-in where we just checked in over Zoom and just checked in on each other to see like how we're doing, and actually just go through the syllabus together and read what our assignments are and just make sure we're all on the same page. It's kind of nice to have support in that sense of, you're not alone, isolated in your home. Like you can connect with people still over Zoom and kind of try to virtually create those relationships.
Actually, that sounds like good advice, whether your class is virtual or not, to build those sort of support networks within with your peers to kind of help make the lift a little lighter when you are kind of sharing that kind of information with each other. So, Uchenna, my question of you is whether or not you felt like you had some different IT needs that were necessary because of virtual or hybrid learning. Did you have some different either equipment or software needs that you had to take care of to make that work?
I would say I did not require any necessary IT needs. I guess when I started in person, which was this quarter. We only went virtual after the Thanksgiving break. And so it was kind of easy transitioning. I already had like headphones. My computer has a webcam. So it was pretty much solid. There was no need to like get extra accessories to work with. Yeah. So I would say you'll be fine if you got a PC that has a webcam. You can always reach out to your classmates via email. Yeah. Thank you.
You bet. Anushka, well, you haven't had virtual. I mean, you've only had your hybrid finals in your kind of your last week of class. Did you find that? And Doug, this may be a question for you as well. Did you find that your professors were accommodating about your individual needs in that kind of virtual environment? And I'll start with you, Anushka.
Right. So my program is a hybrid. So like I have 2 classes in person and one class online. Yes, they have been. I would say I have been following the same pattern. Like I never had to ask for a separate accommodation, but there have been a few students. For example, there were 1 or 2 who were at risk, who have been in contact with the COVID positive people, and they couldn't attend in-person classes. So yes, so the professors would record the session just for them, or like they would come live on Zoom and they would attend the class along with us, just online. So yeah, they have been accommodating, and we would like send them notes and everything online because we created a group on Discord after meeting in the class. So
Sure.
that has been really helpful, like having a separate, group for homework and for like off-topic discussions and all of that.
Great.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that, Doug?
No, I've had a similar experience. The professors have been very accommodating, and it's been going pretty smoothly.
Great. I just want to remind people that you can ask questions of any nature in the chat at any time. It doesn't have to be related to this topic area, but you might have seen that Christine posted some of the information about the vaccine on the chat. If you didn't see that, take a look. And then I'm going to move us into the academic and student support area. So some of you may be feeling nervous about your ability to write academic papers because maybe it's been a long time since you were in school, or maybe you've not had to write for a US university expectation before, and you might be wondering, is there support for you in that regard? So I don't have any idea on our panel here if anybody's taken advantage of the Writing Center. So I'm going to put that question out there if there are any of you that have taken advantage of the Writing Center. Nope. Okay.
I haven't, but I know that some of my classmates have, and they've been just kind of overwhelmed at how helpful and just that they felt they should have gone there a lot sooner. And this wasn't because they felt they were really struggling. They just felt like the kind of support they got was so useful and really took their papers to the next level. So I think there's a range of support there, and they highly recommended that anyone, you know, even just to sit down and kind of block out your ideas, or even think about time management. You know, if you've got a lot going on, how do you make the time to get everything done? So I'll just say, from anecdotal evidence, I hear it's very helpful, and to not feel like you should know this by now. They're ready for any kind of support, and they may even be classmates of yours working there, so you might know them already.
Bonus, that'd be a bonus. So in a similar sort of vein, I had somebody say, I wish that I had taken advantage of faculty office hours earlier, I knew they were there, but I just didn't avail myself of it. So I think that's another sort of tip, is to take advantage of that sort of opportunity for one-on-one with your faculty member if you need the support, or you need clarification about something of that nature. So to do the same with any of these kind of academic support services, as well as that kind of time that faculty set aside for student questions, to take advantage of them. So I wonder if any of you have tips that you would offer for saving money on textbooks or course packs. So I'll start with you, Ashley. Do you have any tips on saving money on textbooks?
I would just say, you know, take a look at the campus store and see how much textbooks cost there, and see what your textbooks are. And then for me, I've actually bought all of my textbooks on Amazon. And there's usually like buying options, and you can kind of see how expensive it's going to be to purchase your book. Pro tip is definitely check when you check out on Amazon that you didn't click rent instead of buy. I've definitely done that a couple of times. But yeah, I mean, I think with textbooks, just, you know, do some searches online and see what else is out there, because there's oftentimes another cheaper version.
Anybody else have tips on textbook, saving money on textbooks?
Oh, go ahead, Anushka, and then I'll go after you.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. So I think there are a few programs where you also get free PDFs, so that you don't have to really buy a textbook, or even rent a textbook. And I would also suggest looking onto eBay if you want to really buy a textbook, because comparatively, compared to Amazon, eBay, sometimes you get like good deals on there. And yes, the campus store, worst case scenario. Yeah. Otherwise, we just have the PDFs. So.
Christine?
And then I would just say that I was a real penny pincher, and I thought, I'm not going to buy any of these books, and I rented them, and then I've lived to regret that on occasion. So I guess I would say, if it's a fundamentals class, it's probably worth buying the textbook, because you keep going back to it, and classes will reference it. Or if you have a capstone, sometimes they'll want you to build from the theories you've learned in that. So now I'm hunting around trying to find that original textbook. So it's kind of just my tip. But there's plenty that you can rent. And also the library sometimes has books. So if it's not the core text, sometimes, you know, if there's additional materials, then you can get them from the library at CLU or King County or Seattle Public Library. So I've done that as well. And I just want to respond to someone in the chat who's asking about how to apply for health insurance waiver if you already have health insurance. As a graduate student, you have to opt into health insurance, so it's not a requirement. I'll put a link there though, so that you can read more, but that's my understanding is you have to actually actively choose health insurance, so it's not automatically billed.
I think that's true, except for international students that may not
Yeah.
have theirs with them. Yeah.
Okay, I'll put the information in the chat.
I think in terms of the library, it's a good segue to the research librarians that are on staff in the library, and each school is assigned a research librarian who becomes a specialist in resources that you have in your area. And one of the tips they will always give is don't buy articles until you talk to them, because they can probably get it to you for free. So get to know who your research librarian is in the library, and you can tell from the library staff who's assigned to your school. And they have lots and lots of tips for getting the information you need for research and for all kinds of periodicals and things like that that are tied to your area of study. So that's another sort of tip is they said, don't buy that until you talk to me, because they may be able to help you out. Okay.
May I add something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so as far as the library, like they have some sort of subscription to O'Reilly books, which make a lot of computer science books. And so they have like hundreds of books that are available digitally, which is great. One tip for finding books on eBay. So some of the textbooks have like an international version, which is actually like different than the domestic version. And it's oftentimes like half the price. And you're like, oh, cool, it's my lucky day. Turns out like the questions are all different and sometimes the content's different and it's just a nightmare. So definitely check the ISBN number. Also, somebody asked a question about internships. So if you're taking the computer science fundamental certificate, you can apply for an internship like after you're finished with that. I mean, you can do it anytime you want, really. It's not as common for people to get an internship after just the fundamentals certificate, but some people do. But definitely once you're in the MSCS program, then it's a lot easier to get an internship if you're looking for a CS internship.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Doug. So most graduate programs have group projects that are required, and there's a skill needed to work effectively in group projects. So I'm interested in kind of hearing from you about tips and suggestions you would have for being successful in working on group projects. And I don't know how deeply you have been involved in that yet, Uchenna, but if you have thoughts about that, I'll start with you. And then perhaps I will go to Ashley next.
Okay. For group projects, I would recommend talking to your group members, talking to the professor in charge of the course, for providing resources to help update your skills, to get you acquainted with the fundamentals of the project. From my experience, this quarter we had a project, and the professor was actually nice to provide resources of how to get up to speed, working with C#, .NET. So you can always interact with your group members, tell them you're having issues, and they would actually help you out, give you tutorials. Of course, if it's like a last minute stuff where you can't actually meet up with the demands of the workload you took up in the project, your group members are always willing to like give you a hand and carry you along. So yeah.
Thank you. One thing that we have a new building, the Senegal Center for Science and Innovation. And one of the things I've been excited to see in the new building is a dedicated space for computer science graduate students. Have you taken advantage of that, Doug or Uchenna?
Yeah, so I'm also working on a group project. I'm doing the software engineering project this quarter, and my group meets in there every 2 weeks. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so before we leave this completely, I want you to tell me if you have discovered your favorite study spot on campus. I know where Anushka's is. Yeah. We'll start with you, Anushka.
Thanks to you. So I think I have two favorite spots in the campus. One is the Collegium, which is I think which is a boon for all the graduate students because you get free coffee as well, and tea and snacks once in a while. So the other spot is it's a hidden secret garden in the university. I mean, students will know if they've, booked their campus tour yet with me. Maybe I can show them around. And yeah, I think these two are like the most favorite ones.
How about you, Christine? Do you have a favorite study place on campus?
Well, I have been remote for most of my last few classes, but when I was on campus, one of my favorite spots, I think it's on the first floor of the library. And if you walk straight through and then hang a left, there's a beautiful room with beautiful art and very comfortable velvet chairs and a lovely view even on a rainy day. And it's very quiet in there. I think it's like a reading room. Anyway, it's very quiet. And it feels like you just kind of discovered a little secret place. So I love that spot.
One of the general rules of thumb in the library is the higher up you go, the quieter it becomes. So if you need a little bit of background noise, don't go to the 5th floor. If you need it to be absolutely quiet, head straight there. All right. So let's just shift course here a little bit, and let's talk about some of the sort of things that we need to do to be successful in this transition. So I think heading back to school for some may have you wondering about that life, work, school balance. And so I'm trying to help people figure out tips for how do you balance out all those different demands in your life. So I will start with, let's start with you, Doug.
Yeah, so definitely a challenge to balance everything. It seems like there's always more to do in classes than you can do. And it's something I'm still trying to figure out completely. There's still room for improvement. But yeah, I mean, trying to really prioritize studying has been something that I've been trying to do, especially since I've been at home a lot more. When I'm on campus, it's a lot easier to focus, but when I'm at home, there's always something to distract me. And so just trying to schedule time and say, well, I could do this other thing, but I'm going to slip in some studying first, and then I make sure the studying gets done, and that's been really helpful.
Great. Do you have some tips on that too, Ashley?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, obviously, try not to leave things to the last minute. It's always great to maybe have some, identify your favorite way to have a schedule, whether that's writing it out. Some people like to have a written calendar, or on your Outlook or computer. Just scheduling time to study is good. And I think, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was actually, when you were talking about this, I was actually thinking back to when I was doing my master's in arts leadership at Seattle U. And one of the tactics that I used to do that I really worked for me was actually working with the Writing Center, in that I would go through my syllabus and see when final papers were going to be due, and then pre-schedule when I would take a draft of the paper in to meet with someone. And that was amazing, because it's then you already have a draft, someone's helping you go through it, and it just really put me miles ahead. So I would definitely try that if you can.
Good tip. Christine, you're working plenty full time and going to school. Do you have any tips before we move on?
Well, one of my tips is I only take one class at a time. So if you are a full-time employee and you're trying not to go crazy, that might be one solution. And I've actually, I thought maybe I was an anomaly, but there are a lot of people doing it that way. So it really just depends on, all the things going on in your life. And, maybe, and some programs require cohorts, so you might not have that option. But yeah, so that would be one thing. And then I just kind of calendar everything. I calendar, when something's due, and then I just spend, my weekends trying to get through a lot, because weekdays are unpredictable. So it's not the most glamorous lifestyle, but that's how I do it.
Got it. Thank you. So we can all testify that this has been a tough past 20, 21 months around the world. It's been tough, and it's been tough on people emotionally and psychologically and in lots of different ways, perhaps even in your health and in your own family situation. So what kind of support might somebody have for who's struggling or losing their focus and needing some help as they try to make this transition into graduate school? So can I start with you, Anushka, if you want to offer anything there, and then, Uchenna, if you have any thoughts about that as well.
Sure. So I think what really helped me, it was like a major transition when I moved to Seattle and away from family for the first time, and everything was new, like the transportation. I didn't know how to figure that out, like how to use a bus here and basic stuff like. So I think what really helped me, since I'm past a quarter now, was connections. Like it's very important to, connect with people after coming here, because I mean, otherwise it honestly is just gonna get too lonely. So I just started building my network around, and once you have a little group of yours, I think it's much better. It's much easier as well. Like also communicate more in the university on campus as much as you can, because that really helps. And we do have different fests and different stuff going on at the university all the time, like I think all the year long. So it also helps, approaching those communities if you have any, and then like participating in the fests and everything. So yeah, I think networking is like super important.
Anything to add to that, Uchenna?
Yeah, so when you move into Seattle newly, for me, I kind of just hopped onto the Connect XU, like Anushka said. Check out school events, meetups, basically network with other students. Additionally, you can always just be proactive in your local community where you live, so that you can get acquainted with people who live around you. I guess make a few friends. They can give you advice on how to move around, how to get things done, and how to make life fun. Yeah.
Thank you. Christine, do you want to add anything about CAPS or any of those sort of resources for people that are struggling emotionally?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people have struggled more than usual, and it kind of sneaks up on you too. So don't be surprised if you find yourself needing more support. Seattle U has a couple of options to help. There's the counseling and psychological CAPS services. So, anyway, it's called CAPS, and I'll put a link in the chat. And they can help you with, just kind of a chat, or also get you connected. There may also be some groups as well. And then I also highly recommend Campus Ministry. They have connection where you can just, get a good listening ear from someone. They're really wonderful people, and it doesn't have to have anything to do with religion. It's just more just people who are trained in, listening and helping you through hard times. So I'll put both those links in the chat. And then you might also look at your health insurance and see what you can get in terms of therapy. I know it's been very hard. I just saw an article in the paper the other day that it's just the waits are long. So maybe just don't wait too long. Maybe that's the message, is like, don't wait till you're feeling so overwhelmed. Maybe try to reach out before that happens. And then of course, family and friends. So I'll put some links in the chat.
Thank you. Doug, I see there was a question for you that popped up in the chat. Do you want to address that?
Yeah, so basically, like the workload does vary the question is how much does the workload vary between the certificate and the bootcamp and the master's program? The bootcamp is like super intense, and it's designed for people who are not working full time. There's definitely been people who have been successful in the bootcamp while working full time, but it's extremely taxing and they have to make some compromises, and it's not fun. The certificate program and the master's program are intended more for, well, the certificate program especially is intended for people who are working full time. Although from talking to a lot of people who did that while working full time or tried to do that, it's also challenging, although not as challenging as the bootcamp, which is way more intense. And then the master's program is intended to be full-time unless you just take one class at a time and then you're allowed to work full-time or something. But the thing is it really comes down to how capable you are at doing lots of things at once. So for me, I found out the hard way that it's really challenging to work full-time and try to do a lot of school things on the side. Although I've known other people who have done that and more. So yeah, it just kind of depends. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. So Ashley talked earlier about some of the technologies that or apps that she adopted for her classmates to stay in touch with each other. And did you say WhatsApp, Ashley, that you all are using? I think some folks are using WhatsApp, but others may be using other tools or other applications that help your classmates stay in touch with each other. So do you want to talk about any of that? I see some nodding that is happening, but I think Anushka, and you may have some other choices that your program is using to stay in touch with each other.
Yeah, we also use Discord. Yeah, so I think one of my senior told me about it, and since then I introduced it like to everybody in my class, and I was surprised that nobody knew about it. And that has really helped us like discuss things online, and yeah, just kept us all together even during our online classes and on our group projects and everything. So Discord really helped, and I think if you want to, individually connect with somebody, Outlook and Messenger also helps to an extent. Yeah.
And I think some of the being able to use some of these tools that are outside of the kind of university sphere help people use it for academic and non-academic purposes. So part of the reason I asked that question is sometimes I've heard people say that, if you are struggling and at some point in time to talk to your classmates, let them know. And some of the benefit is in being in smaller classes is that you can kind of hold each other up and help you through the tough times, but also celebrate the great times together. So it's a way for you to have a forum that's outside of class to be able to share things that are happening in your life. So make sure that you take advantage about that. A place like Seattle University is really a relationship-based experience. And so you heard both Anushka and Uchenna and others talk about making those sort of connections with people in class and elsewhere on campus and kind of building your community around you. And one of the things that I absolutely have loved seeing over the years is graduation. And when I go to the graduation for graduate students, it is a much more raucous affair than you would ever imagine for adult learners. And part of it is because it's this intergenerational thing. There's babies and grandparents and classmates and coworkers and significant others and everything in between. Everybody who was the village that was holding you up is there to celebrate you. So I'll be delighted to be back in face-to-face commencement, which I understand is the intention for this June. So please let that still be the case, because it's an absolutely wonderful experience to kind of see that village that you all have. So build the village, and that's the tip I'm hearing them say. So lastly in this area is some questions that people have about seeking on-campus jobs and using Handshake to find campus jobs. So I know that Anushka did that. I don't know if others did as well. So I'll start with Anushka, but anybody else who may have taken advantage of Handshake to look for on-campus positions. I'll have you jump in there, but I'll start with you, Anushka.
Yeah, so I connected with one of the senior during such a welcome event last year. Yeah, and they told me about, how to find on-campus jobs. So thanks to COVID, the only way to look for on-campus jobs was via a handshake. So I had to first work on my resume, a cover letter, and then, keep changing it based on the job that I'm applying for, based on the interests and everything. And then I would suggest it's better. Your chances are high if you apply as soon as you get the admit, if you start out looking for jobs, because there are a lot of students who are looking for on-campus jobs. And yeah, so I started applying as soon as I received my admission letter, and it's always safe to apply to as many as you can, I would say, and then schedule the interviews and everything. So yeah, that's how I got my job. And yeah, I suggest the same.
Okay. Anybody else to take advantage of handshake? Okay. Christine posted the link for handshake out there in the chat. I did see also a chat that was sort of a follow-up for other things that people have used like Slack and Teams to do some of those sort of communications with your classmates as you move forward. So all really good examples. And Seattle U is taking advantage of the full slate of team tools. So you'll see that in a lot of different things across campus for sure. Okay, before I wrap it all up, I'm going to have each of you respond to what is something you wish you would have learned before you came, or something you would have, if you are somebody who's brand new, like what's a tip that you wish you had known as you were starting the beginning of your program? Okay. I will start with Doug. Mostly because he's got his Bob Ross photo. I mean, the picture in the back, and it's making him pensive.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about that. Like, I think one thing that that I've learned is just how I feel like the master's program, you really have to kind of have a lot of self-motivation. Maybe in undergrad, there was a lot more like spoon feeding of information and hand-holding, whereas in the master's program, you really kind of have to be more self-motivated and be willing to also kind of learn some things on the side to be sure that you're successful. And so it took me a while to figure that out, but once I figured that out, it's been helpful.
That's great. Thank you. Ashley, do you want to offer something up there?
Yeah, and I think for me, when I got to my program, to my doctorate program, I feel like I definitely experienced a little bit of imposter syndrome. And one of the things that I started doing was just really focusing on producing, really putting the emphasis on creating the paperwork, or like starting to work on the final paper and starting to work on the final post, and writing. And it wasn't until like one of my professors was like, doing the reading is just as important as creating that final product, and recommended that I spend more time in the material actually doing the readings and not worrying so much about the end result. And turns out once I started doing that, the writing was like so much easier because I actually had the content. And it sounds really obvious, but I think just in the society that we live in, like producing content kind of becomes a focus. So just don't forget to focus just as much time on getting into that content and actually setting aside time to do the reading, even though it doesn't feel as productive, because in the end, it'll really, really help you.
Excellent tip. Excellent tip. Christine.
I guess you both hit on things that I have been thinking about, but I guess one other thing I would add is maybe just the flip to what Ashley was saying, but work smarter, not harder. And I found that some of my classmates were in groups where they would split up the reading and then fill each other in, you know, like in an in-depth way, but not have to, because I think sometimes you'll find you're in a class where there's so much reading and it's just not possible to get through it all when you have other classes. So maybe sometimes creating little study groups and sort of dividing up the work in a way that's still authentic, but maybe not so much, you know, just an ungodly amount of work.
Yeah,
So that would just be mine.
thank you. Good tip. Uchenna, do you have any pearls of wisdom? Something you wish you would have known in the beginning that you want to share?
I'll say for me, it's all about reaching out to the professors. When I came into this quarter, I wasn't so sure of how to reach out to professors. Although I knew the like visiting hours, I was just kind of skeptical of how they would react once I get to them, right? I didn't want to like sound like an idiot or sound unintelligent. So yeah, but I guess when you reach out to them, they always come out friendly and nice. They sound like they want to help you. I mean, they actually want to help you. And so I guess just talk to them. Even if you sound like an idiot, they're gonna make you smarter. So you'll be fine.
Yeah, don't let them intimidate you. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah, they're there to help.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. That's a great tip. Anushka, we'll wrap that up with you.
Yeah, so just adding on to everybody's thoughts, I majorly agree with the reading part because I come from a very different educational country where we have a very different educational system. And what I would have known is, I think, a lot of things moving into a new country, new city. So I would say things would have been much easier for me if I knew the right direction to look into for resources. So I think that was the most important. And like, yeah, the readings part. Yes, totally agree. I think we should start reading like before the quarter starts. That really helps.
Oh, don't tell that to your faculty. They'll definitely have you do that. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the wisdom that our panelists shared with you today, and I am grateful for their time and their wisdom with you. So it was what Anushka said is a good segue to a couple of plugs that I want to give you here as we wrap up. You all should have received the invitation to the online Canvas orientation. And Canvas is our learning management system that you'll be working in for class projects and things like that as well. But it is a resource that is ongoing, that you'll have access to it for your first 2 quarters. Things will change, so we don't want to extend it too far beyond that if in case the information becomes outdated. But please take advantage of that as you go through your first and second quarters, and something may not have utility for you on the front end, but you may find a couple months in that you're like, oh, I wonder where I can get the XYZ, and you may be able to find it out there in the orientation. You heard Christine say that she works at the Student Support Center, and that website is just chock full of a lot of information. They've done a lot of research to populate that site with the many, many questions that new and continuing students have had over time. And so I very much encourage you to take advantage of what that site has to offer, and also the opportunity to ask questions of an individual who will do whatever they can to get that answer for you. And in fact, they have an ingenious website address, which is what, Christine?
I just put it in the chat, but it's the Get Answers.
Get Answers, yes. So that should make you feel encouraged. So don't forget about the Student Support Center. I'm also going to remind you about your campus cards and the digital photo option. If any of you have been newly admitted, that information will be coming out to you in the next day or so. But encourage you to get the information about the campus card some of our buildings lock at 7 in the evening and you need your campus card to get in. So please look into getting your campus card. Finally, I would say that, well, almost finally, the university offices are going to be closing for the holidays after the end of business on Friday of this week. And then we'll not be back until the day before classes begin. So Monday, January 3rd, we'll reopen. So if you have unfinished business that you need to take care of before we close, I encourage you to do that before end of the day on Friday. And hopefully we can take care of that for you before we are gone for a couple of weeks. And so finally, I want to thank you all for being here, but I also want to encourage you to start building that network that you've heard people talk about. I want you to ask questions, always ask. People want to help you and they want to put you on the right path. So please don't feel like you're imposing on someone by asking the questions. We want you to be successful and we'll try to find the answers for you. So please do take advantage of the resources that we have on campus to help you in your success. And please take advantage of all of those. So once again, I want to thank you for being here. I want to applaud our panelists and thank you for that student-to-student wisdom that you had to share. And I wish you all happy holidays. And for our students who just finished finals last week, no, earlier this week, that they just finished finals, that they're ready for a little break. So thank you all again for being here. And we really look forward to having you all join us in January. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.